So if you go back to 2001 when we first started, I would say we were accurate but not reliable. So what I mean by that is probably 95% of the times we would track the ball, it would be right and be accurate. But when we were just a broadcast enhancement, we couldn't deliver that for 100% of balls. And there were things that we had to do to get the system 100% reliable. So every single ball would have an accurate track. But by the time, well before, to be honest, we transitioned from being a broadcast enhancement to being used officially for the game, then we were 100% accurate and 100% reliable. And there's an awful lot that goes into the quality control of that, not just with us, but independently with the ICC to sort of like maintain that quality reassurance. That's obviously pretty important for officiating. And, now we've got like 20 kits and a lot of staff around the world. It's a big operation to make sure that does happen. But credibility takes an awfully long time to build up and a very short amount of time to lose. So it's super important.
Welcome to another edition of Close of Play with me, Sanjay Murthy. You will have watched, either in person or on the TV, games of football, cricket, tennis, the NFL or Aussie rules. And you'll have been amazed by the technology that has now driven the way that we enjoy and consume that content. And there's one man who's actually brought that technology to us. Please welcome to the show the founder and inventor of HawkEye, Mr. Paul Hawkins. Paul, how are you?
Hi, Sanjay. Really nice to be here. Yeah, really well. I'm looking forward to today.
Yeah, actually, I introduced you as Mr. Paul Hawkins, but technically, there's a doctor and there's some letters, isn't there?
Well, yeah, but we don't need to get technical.
No, exactly. Casual
nice
chat.
Formal chat. So yeah, all good.
The HawkEye, I mean, it was known for cricket, and the way that we changed, or the way that how we consumed it, how we watch cricket and enjoy cricket has changed over the years. But it's now been used in other sports, tennis, as I said. In fact, we'll touch on the line judges at Wimbledon at some point. But how did it all start? Actually, no. Before we do that, in layman's terms, could you just let us know what HawkEye is, how it works, and its use cases?
So it started, as you said, in cricket, and in those days it was cameras, 6 cameras to start with, around the stadium in the back of the stands normally, and each of those would track the ball, and then the computer that combines it all together. So if you know where the ball is in all the 6 cameras, you can work out where it is in 3D. So you track the ball from bowler releasing it through to pitching, and then from pitching up until the batsman would hit it, or it'd hit their pads, and then you could make a forward prediction of that second part of the trajectory from pitching to them to predict where it would go past the stump. So whilst it's become a lot more than that, even in cricket, in terms of tracking the ball off the bat and tracking the players and the biomechanics, the essence of where it started was that bowler's trajectory of and it was just cameras to start with, but as we progressed into lots of other sports, now do 26 sports.
Right.
We've extended our technology, so it's not just tracking now, it's replay as well, and it's not just cameras, it's audio and all sorts of things. So as we've progressed, it's been about understanding the sport, understanding what they need, and then working out what's the best technology for them.
And are they your cameras, or are you reliant on the broadcast cameras?
Most sports is our cameras.
Right,
again,
okay.
it's all engineering is about finding the right compromise. So for example, in cricket, when you see the LBW, whilst it's our camera, it's a broadcast quality camera. So you see that on air. Other sports, tennis, our cameras, you don't see on air there. In many, it's black and white. So it's just, what's right for the sport.
And with the predictive analysis part in cricket, I mean, whilst we are going to touch on other sports, this is fundamentally a cricket show, so I'm going to try and keep it vaguely on track. If somebody like Mitchell Starc is bowling to Ben Duckett, for example, or Zach Crawley, I always call him, shows my age, I always call him John Crawley, but obviously Zach Crawley is more accurate. Does it sort of calculates the height differences if Nathan Lyon's bowling or Mitchell Starc's bowling, or someone shorter, someone taller? Is that all part of the calculation?
Well, you don't sort of like input into the system, this is the height of the ball, because it's kind of irrelevant. Like it's two independent stretches from release to pitching.
Okay.
And then whatever's happened then is kind of irrelevant to the from pitching to hitting the batsman. So we don't care whether it's bounced high or if it's skidded. We're not sort of like trying to guess whether it would skid but we just measure what it actually did do on that particular ball.
Because it's done what it's done.
Yeah. So it's, so obviously you don't know how much, and the number of people that have said stupid things like, I don't know whether it's going to move off the seam one way or the other. So how can HawkEye? Well, we know because we look at it and we measure it in the same way as an umpire does, but a little bit more accurately and consistently.
Yeah. With the DRS, the decision review system in cricket, sometimes you see sometimes where the ball's pitched and the umpires, let's say the umpire's given it out and it comes as a surprise when you see it on the screen that the bounce has taken it over the stumps. That level of accuracy, has that been developed over time, or was it always there from the beginning?
So if you go back to 2001 when we first started, I would say we were accurate but not reliable. So what I mean by that is probably 95% of the times we would track the ball, it would be right and be accurate. But when we were just a broadcast enhancement, we couldn't deliver that for 100% of balls. And there'd be ones for whatever reasons, software new and bugs or mistakes, noise, we track something else. The bottom of batsmen's feet were often quite difficult because particularly for red ball cricket, you could end up with like a shadow of the bottom of a foot, which looks quite like a ball, and that might pull the track. So there were things that we had to do to get the system 100% reliable, so every single ball would have an accurate track. But by the time, well before, to be honest, we transitioned from being a broadcast enhancement to being used officially for the game, then we were 100% accurate and 100% reliable. And there's an awful lot that goes into the quality control of that, not just with us, but independently with the ICC to sort of like maintain that quality reassurance. That's obviously pretty important for officiating. And, now we've got like 20 kits and a lot of staff around the world. It's a big operation to make sure that does happen. But credibility takes an awfully long time to build up and a very short amount of time to lose. So it's, it's super important to us.
Yeah. I always say brand equity was consistency and frequency. So, that's pretty much how I say it. So would you say is your percentage at 100% now in terms of accuracy?
I don't think we since we've been DRS, we've had to hold our hands up a couple of times. But I don't think we've had to hold our hands up in the last 5 years. Let's say so. Yeah, and we are completely honest. So we don't try and hide behind a mistake. So there's a couple of times that we have needed to, but it's a very rare occasion.
So the process of kind of accreditation or utilization, if you like, is the ICC has to give it, presumably, some sort of stamp of approval. Then what's the process after that? Is it the home boards? Is it the broadcasters that choose what technology they use? How does that work?
Yeah, it's odd in cricket and different to tennis and football, where the system has to go through a rigorous testing process in other sports to be licensed, if you like. And only once you've got a license can you then offer your services to the broadcasters and the governing bodies. The same level of testing hasn't really ever happened in cricket. And so it's a little bit more, there's a lot more scope for broadcasters to choose what they want for not for officiating reasons, for price, where people are from, for the broadcast side of the technology in terms of the telling the stories, the graphics, or whatever. So yeah, it's odd, and I think it's largely just from the history of where cricket came from, that it was a broadcast enhancement before it was an officiating aid. So that's still the case. In Australia at the moment, it's not our technology doing DRS, but it is for a lot of the rest of the world.
Yeah, because you've got Snicko in Australia, we did have Hotspot, that seems to have gone by the wayside. Is HawkEye now the dominant technology?
Yeah, we do the lion's share, a high market share of all international cricket. And you're right. So ours is UltraEdge, which is sounds and the video get combined together, and we sync the two together. And it's not as trivial as one might think, because since sound travels so slowly, you have to take into account whether the impact of the ball hitting something was 2.5 meters from the stumps or 1.5 meters from the stumps, and that's relevant for the sound to the video. So we do that. So when you see the graphic of the audio along with the video with our stuff, they'll always be in sync.
And actually, you mentioned something about cricket there, that I think cricket, compared with other sports, is fast to adopt technology, or just generally innovation, but not necessarily the most thorough in terms of its implementation. It seems to learn on the job, if you like, as opposed to maybe football and tennis, which maybe is much more rigorous in its testing and then sort of adoption and go live. Is that a fair assessment, or is that me being cynical about cricket?
I think that's to be fair of what's happened historically. I think they'd probably if there was something else new coming in, I think the ICC would probably take a different view. They'd probably learn their lessons, but historically that's probably a fair assessment of what happened. Quite a long time ago now, 15, 20 years ago.
How much do you think your technology or technology generally plays a part in that innovation? Does innovation lead technology, or does technology lead the innovation?
Well, I think it's a conversation, and what I think we've done reasonably well has been contributing to the thought leadership of sports, because ultimately what I see our role within the officiating world is ultimately to stop the officials being the story. The good umpire doesn't get noticed, a good wicketkeeper doesn't get noticed. And so for me, that's what are you aiming to achieve? What's your role in life? It's, for the press to be writing about the game and the players and that. So if that's what you're aiming to achieve, you've then got to work back as to how can technology integrate into the game to maintain the fabric of the game in the best way for me to give it the best chance of not being the story. And that's sort of like why the umpire's call area has sort of like evolved, that, I think that does meet that criteria. The one that was just clipping leg, that no one's ever was giving it out. If the umpire had given it not out initially, it stays not out. And that kind of felt right. And again, it probably stops it being the story. So that's sort of like how those things kind of evolve. And it's being part of that thought leadership. VAR in football is one where we would have liked to have done a little bit more trials and testing, and I think the challenge system would have been good for VAR, and I think that might still come in the fullness of time. So, like sport and business need to have vehicles to innovate in a safe environment where you can try things before it goes into the World Cup and the elite league.
Yeah, you mentioned VAR. We'll come to that. In football and cricket, let's say, where there's so many variations of the game in terms of men's and women's football, various tiers, international, domestic, and whatever. Do you envisage a time where it's commonplace that HawkEye or technology that drives VAR, part of the technology that drives VAR in football or in cricket, becomes ubiquitous and everyone has to use it?
Well, I think one of the things that I personally am working a lot on at the moment is lower cost versions of our technology. There is already a lower cost tier of VAR in football, which actually does have a challenge system. It's designed for football where there's only like 4 or so cameras. And then I'm proactively working on in cricket. Cricket's my passion, and that's why if Hawk had only ever done cricket, I'd have been perfectly happy, frankly. And so we now have got all of our HawkEye technology working just on a mobile phone, and VCB for the last few years have had the umpires wearing GoPros. Next year, changed from GoPros to mobile phones, and that technology is evolving to the point that we're now tracking pretty accurately and reliably. We're still not at the point where it's DRS accurate or reliable, but we're going through that journey with that kind of technology that we did with our core system 25 years ago. And I think it will get to a point where certainly runouts and stumpings are pretty straightforward of being able to use it at the lower tiers. LBWs, I think we'll get there at a period of time. Possibly with a little bit of combining together, could the LBW laws change to make it easier for technology to be able to...
That was giving me a question around umpire's call, actually, where the umpire's given it. Let's say how would I phrase it? The ball. Let's say the ball is clipping leg stump, and it's how would they? Yeah, so it's clipping leg stump. So therefore, whatever decision the umpire's given is proved to be incorrect. Is that a law change thing that needs to happen for HawkEye to then change its outcome?
Yeah, that's up to the the ICC, and there's the MCC playing committee that contribute to. So yeah, we will provide whatever they decide when we contribute to that if they ask us. But that one, the umpire's call area has reduced from when it first came out. It's smaller now than it used to be. So they've tweaked it, but I think the general consensus is cricket's better with umpire's call, but whether that will change in the future is obviously
you mentioned VAR. Is VAR made up of multiple technologies, of which HawkEye is one, or or is it basically HawkEye rebadged with a brand name?
So HawkEye, for most of there are competitors, so HawkEye don't do all VAR all around the world,
right?
But where we generally do it all, and there are different flavors of it. So there's now semi-automatic offside, which kind of feeds into it, where we're tracking all of the players and the ball to automatically give the offside decisions, or quickly give the offside decisions. And then there's the VAR, which is it's a little bit more clever than this, but largely a replay system where you're providing the right angles to the VAR official for him to then liaise with the referee to possibly overrule their initial decision.
Because you said cricket was your first, was your love, and you were a good amateur sportsman back in the day. Although I say back in the day, but obviously we're going to touch on your rowing exploits recently, so I have to bring that to sort of modern day. But tell us a little bit about your sporting background, because it's multi-sport, and how much of a role did that have to play in the development of HawkEye?
I think it had a huge role to play, and something that I'm super passionate about. And if I could do one more thing in my life, it would be to really change the way that cricket is taught, particularly at the pathway kind of academy levels. That for me, the role that sport has played in my life is to teach me the life values that I hold dear and apply to all parts of my life, business, relationships, everything. I think my work ethic I definitely got through sport, leadership, team work, dealing with disappointment, confidence, you name it. I think sport is a fantastic, safe playing field to do it. And then I've dipped around with different sports at different times. I suppose I go up a learning curve and get to a point that I'm not getting much better, and I'll just do a different sport. So I played table tennis at junior England kind of level, decent chess player, cricket, rowed at university, and then across the Atlantic, I'm near scratch golfer. And so I kind of
sort of person we hate generally, right?
But I've never been a professional or anywhere near it at any of them. But that enjoyment of trying to get better at something and working harder, competing is I think generic across all sports, and I think it's fantastic life values, which is why I encourage my kids to do as much as they can of whatever they want to pursue.
And was there a frustration in the way that you saw the game being adjudicated, officiated when you played, that sort of gave you the thought process for HawkEye?
Well, to be honest, my passion was more about helping explain the game, and telling the story of so girlfriend that doesn't follow the cricket and they don't want to watch it or whatever. But no, if you understood it, you really would. So, but obviously, the broadcast story, they want to resolve the controversial moment. So it was that's what the broadcasters really wanted, and it kind of evolved. And then when we transitioned from being a broadcast enhancement to being used officially for the game, it was a real kind of a step up moment of, okay, I wanted to be a professional sports cricketer. I wasn't good enough, but this is my opportunity to make a real sport. Yeah, and thank God I wasn't good enough, as it turns out. But and I've really felt that responsibility to the game as something I've held dear, and tried to be as responsible and respectful with it as possible.
Tennis is an interesting one, isn't it? Because same-ish technology. I mean, I guess at heart it's cameras matriculating coordinates and forecasting. And this year at Wimbledon, I think was the first time that there were no line judges. What's been the how did that come about? And has there been any sort of negative backlash to the experience and I went to Wimbledon, so I can tell you what I think.
Well, go on then. You start then. What did you think?
I thought it was weird at first because the court looked emptier because there's less people, clearly. But then after the match started, I didn't notice. Is that true? I did notice all the way through it that it looked emptier, but it didn't diminish my experience of being at Wimbledon. And actually, the oohs and the ahs of the crowd when they replayed it on the screen with the player affected or not standing right next to it was good, because that kept the crowd in it. Now, I assume that would have taken. So let me phrase this as a question then. Would that have happened if there were line judges, or was it and if there was a challenge, would it be shown on the screen previously?
Yeah, previously it would have only been shown on the screen if there was a challenge, because you don't be showing the player, oh, you should have challenged and you didn't.
Yeah.
So there's that side of it. I think tennis have done a really good job of the process of innovation. To a certain extent, that obviously we had HawkEye and the challenge system, and definitely when it was rolled out, that was the best way of doing it. It added a new element of drama and a feature to the game, and line calls were right. It was brought that entertainment and the clapping and everything that came with it. But I think that probably had its day, and obviously it does slow in the game. It gives the players something to think about outside of just their game. And tennis, they first did it at the next gen, which is like the ATP tools. So they started at a lower level to see kind of what the reaction was, how the crowd would react, and how to do it. It required a little bit of evolving of our technology. Things like ones where it's been out one end or some, and then you've got to make sure it doesn't beep because they still hit it back, and
that's so right. Yeah,
and then there's a few nuances around the technology that you've got to make sure it doesn't beep again or get called out for when the ball's no longer in play, and like little nuances. So it took a little bit of evolving to get it so that kind of, and obviously it's got to be really quick to make sure that so that was an issue as well. And so they did the right kind of thing. They innovated, they tried it, they tested it in a safer environment first, where if it had not gone so well, they could revert it. The same way as they trialed no lets for serves in that kind of environment, and they haven't put that through. And then I think COVID was a little bit of a catalyst that whilst Wimbledon have only just adopted, the US Open and the Australian Open have been doing it for a few years, slightly forced upon them because during COVID it was difficult to get the line judges there anyway. And so, it just ramped up of the number of events not using line judges over a period of time. And quite rightly, Wimbledon's the last of the Grand Slams to go that, because, it's got an incredibly brilliant event. So you don't tweak with it until you're definitely sure it's going to be the right thing to do.
what I found really interesting was the compression on the ball. When it is virtually, oval when it hits the ground. There's something you don't realize.
There's something like there's the accuracy and believability of the system, and why if you see a broadcast replay, which is obviously a much lower frame rate, it can look very deceptive, because very roughly on grass, the ball will be in contact with the ground for just under 10 centimeters for an average kind of shot. So as the ball first comes in and first makes contact with the ground, it looks almost identical to how it looks as it's uncompressing and about to leave the ground. So now if the broadcast frame that you capture happens to be at the point where it's just leaving the ground, it looks like it's on the, it's still touching the ground, and it could look way out, but it's 10 centimeters in a different place to where it was when it first touched the ground. So that's one of those things that we kind of need to explain. And
on that, with cricket, with the ball, with the catches that look like, especially in the slips, there was famously Mitchell Starc was unlucky, I think, back in the last touches. Can HawkEye play a role in that, or do you already, or is it just very difficult?
So that's not something that it's just very difficult, isn't it? To be honest, I think the third umpires have got better at trying to interpret understanding the foreshortening and all the rest of it. And it's because there's definitely a time when things were being given not out when things had got underneath the ball and that side of things. So, it's a difficult one for technology to do. You could spend loads of money and put really high frame rate cameras looking at the slips, but does it happen frequently enough and it become controversial to warrant the expense?
I mean, really, you're back to, if the player says he caught it or she caught it, then that's what happened, right?
My mum always used to say that, difference between referees and umpires is an umpire should be there only when the two teams don't agree. And I think it is one area of cricket that hopefully, obviously, walking has gone in terms of nicking it, but it's just one area where if the first slip says he caught it, then hopefully
that's what it is.
Right, yeah.
HawkEye's been around for kicking off 25 years now. We'll talk about. So I think I'll ask you what the three, whatever number you want, sort of breakthrough moments or magic moments, if you like, in sport that you recall. But let's go with some negatives first. What are there been some horror shows back in the day where it's done something or shown the audience something where fundamentally wasn't what happened?
Yeah, we've had some, you search on YouTube where something's happened where we've shown a track which is wrong, and I hate looking at that. It really hurts.
Yeah,
and it's good that it should hurt.
Of course, sure.
And this. So they've not so like I can't think of one in any recent time, but yeah, back in the day, it's still in cricket. Sometimes DRS are quite slow, and there's a manual process that a review, whatever, that something's gone on behind the scenes. So it's very rare that we don't provide it. But if it's happened slowly, that I hate that still as well. That I know that something's happened for whatever reason that's been slow. So that still hurts.
I bet you can remember some magic moments though.
Do you know, I think my proudest HawkEye moment, but it's the 2008 Wimbledon final, and coming back to the umpire not being known, but Nadal was 2 sets to love up, and in the tiebreak of the third set, Federer had a call which was called out, so he'd have lost that point. He challenged, overruled. It was then in. And so he won that point. It wasn't set point, but if the following points had have gone the way that they did anyway, it would have meant that he'd have lost that set. So had it not been for HawkEye, Nadal would have won in 3 straight sets. There'd have been a controversial line calling moment right at the end of the match, which would have then been the story of the game. As it turned out, Federer won that set, won the next one, ended up still losing the match in 5 sets, generally regarded as one of the best Wimbledon finals ever. Officiating's never been mentioned, and everyone enjoyed a fantastic game. For me, that's technology is at its best.
Right.
It didn't get noticed, and it helped the players be the story. So that's probably my proudest moment.
So is that the criteria of success in your eye? Then how less or least the officials are noticed.
I think that's a great yardstick to measure all technology. Well, all skills, whether it's with technology or not. Yeah.
Because if you've got human interaction, what's the point of technology, or it's not working, I suppose. Let's bring it to today. I mentioned obviously your previous sporting prowesses, but you and his son Joshua rode. Was it last year? It's about a year ago. It was December last year.
It's December last year. Yeah.
I rode from the Spanish island of La Gomera to Antigua, 4,800 kilometers. How did that come about? Why did you do it, etc.?
It's like, as I said, I've got so many life values through sport. But this undoubtedly my proudest sporting moment, not just to do it with my son, but so as a parent, there was a little bit of, I want to give the kind of life lessons that I think sport can provide. And that challenge certainly did it. It was 4 years in the preparation. Josh, my son, he put his hand up and said, I wanted to do it. And I asked the challenge. He was only 14 at the time. I thought, we'll see whether this sticks, but it did. And it gave him a sense of purpose. It gave us both a sense of purpose in terms of our training. We got strong, fit, and then it's not just the physical. There's an awful lot of getting the boat ready and all the preparation that goes into it. So it's almost like a mini company of trying to get ready. And I said probably 90% of the work is done before you actually leave. And then it took us 42 days, and just dealing with the tiredness, and because you rode for 2 hours at a time, and then you come off the oars, the other person takes over. So you're 2 hours on, 2 hours off for 42 days. And so you get into you're never sleeping for more than, let's say, 90 minutes by the time you've had a wash, got changed, and rest of it, and get down. But the mental resilience, we won the pairs this year, so that sort of like kept us going in terms of we were competitive, but just the dealing with the resilience, the mental toughness, just to keep on going when things are tough, to keep each other going, good decent morale in the boat and everything, and then the sense of achievement as we were coming into Antigua is something that I'll never forget. And still, I did a talk the other day, and they showed the show reel from it, and I still kind of welled up. It's something that I'm super.
Yeah, and is that one off, or will you do it again?
No, for me, it's a one-off. Like, lots of people said, my son left a boy and arrived a man. And I think that's probably right. We'll see what we thought about. If he did it again, he might do it with his son, sort of like in a generation's time, and it become tradition. What? But it won't be grandfather, father, son. I've done it.
Dynastical thing. Why did you call the boat scholarship?
Because it was a learning opportunity. For us, I think it was all about learning those life skills. So the play on words with the ship. Josh was still at school. He was at a very sporty school, but to be honest, the school didn't really give him the life lessons I'd hoped it would have done through sport, and so we kind of had to take matters into my own hands and give him those life opportunities outside of the school. School were incredibly unsupportive. Actually, it was quite surprising for a sporty school, but it was for those reasons.
And you didn't use HawkEye to predict any sort of arrivals of large sharks or anything there? It's good. Because that segues really badly onto other uses for HawkEye, I think, in terms of, do you see it just being a sporting technology, or has it got a role? Well, it's got roles in other sports, obviously, as well, but does it have a role outside sport?
HawkEye's currently not done anything outside of sport, largely because our passion is sport. And so, yes, the technology and similar technologies are used by other companies in many other industries, and we've been approached and did things in the military and but it's just in the same way as even what we've done within sport, we've kind of stuck to things that we're passionate about. Currently, that's still kind of the case, that I think you're far better at innovating and coming up with ideas if it's something that you genuinely believe in and you're not doing it just for the money. And so that's what we've kind of stayed a bit.
Yeah, because you've got that, as you said, we've got that sort of core principle of officiating in terms of, if the officials not being noticed. Are there any sports where you think, I suppose football is probably the obvious example, where the officials are too noticeable? So VAR has obviously had a lot of criticism, and it's an evolving tool again. Do you see a time where the impact that HawkEye's had on tennis and cricket specifically will actually be applicable to football as well?
Well, I think hopefully, well, what I'd like to see sports do more of is, and this, for sports, give themselves an environment that kind of that tennis had done to a certain extent, of having a safe place that they can innovate. And therefore you can evolve the sport of whichever way you want to evolve it, whether it's about officiating, it's about player welfare, it's about fan engagement or whatever, in a safe environment. So you can try things. Obviously you don't want to be changing the rules every 5 minutes and it all becomes a bit complicated, but you can try that safe environment. So when the governing bodies are having debates about whether this would be good or not good, you've actually got some actual, you're not just guessing, you've whether it be at university sport level, whether it be at lower level, you find a safe environment where you can try things and you can do it. And, I've got 101 ideas for different sports of ways that the officiating in particular could evolve to do that. Maybe they're all bad ideas, but I think all the sports should have a vehicle like mine, and everybody else's ideas can be trialed, and then, that kind of go through.
I don't know, there's no such thing as a bad idea, is there? Ideas are ideas. But I guess for you, though, for everything that you've learned through HawkEye over the last 20 odd years and how it's evolved and the role you've played in evolving sports, there must be a role for you outside of HawkEye in and around sporting organizations and governing bodies.
Well, I'd love to be on that side of the fence and listen to the kind of the debates and the and from their perspective and contribute to some ideas. I think there's a good scope for a lot of sports at the moment to actually think about whether the easiest way to reduce the controversial officiating decisions is actually just to have less rules in the first place. So, for example, I think particularly for limited over cricket, there'd be no reason that LBW couldn't be just as simple as if the ball's hitting the stumps or not hitting the stumps, and get rid of pitched outside leg, hit outside off stump, because really it doesn't matter. Maybe get rid of leg buys as well, just to make it easier to officiate in the first instance. And no one sort of like test cricket of standing in front of their stumps, trying to do that, because if you try and umpire, it is an incredibly difficult decision. I think offside, I had a chat to a couple of former players recently, and the whole reason for offside was to stop goal hanging. Now, you're already in the final third of the pitch attacking. You're not goal hanging. So is there an argument for saying for all balls kicked in the final third, which is 95% of the difficult offside decisions to make, you can't be offside? You already can't be offside for throw-ins, so why not for if you're already attacking? That just means that there's less decisions to be made. There's less potential for controversial things because you there's no decision there. I think it wouldn't be bad for rugby if you couldn't knock on from an opposition kick, to try and reduce the number of kicks in the first place, reduce the number of scums, reduce the stoppages in play, and just get on with the game. No fullback would deliberately drop the ball, but just carry on. So, all of these kind of things are things that and everyone will have lots of other ideas, but find a way to test them, see what impact they have on the game, and then bring them in if they prove to be a worthwhile direction.
Listen, Paul, over the years you've had I guess my final question is, when you had the idea for HawkEye and developed it, did you ever think it would have the impact it's had on sport and multiple sports across the world as it has done over the last 20 odd years?
Like, absolutely not. And I think I probably approached the development of HawkEye the same way as what I would have approached, if I'd have been a professional sportsman. That all I'd have done is try to be the best version of myself every single day, and just see where it gets to, and not think that much about whether that's going to get me to be the county champion or the national champion or the slam champion, and because I suppose our energy and passion was just to be as good as we could be, and see where that gets us. So there's obviously a lot of luck along the way in terms of opportunities that opened up through a lot of the big changes in HawkEye's career. Has been a reactive step to a controversial decision. Frank Lampard's goal at the 2010 World Cup didn't do us any harm, and scenarios like that where we've been in the right place at the right time. But no, it's been a fantastic journey, and still is.
Yeah, no, listen, thanks for coming on. Good luck in everything you do, as well as interesting to see how HawkEye evolves and develops over the foreseeable. And Paul Hawkins, thank you very much for being on Close of Play.
Thank you.